This is From the Backline, the podcast dedicated to the Whitecaps FC, MLS, and all things soccer.
Welcome to episode 104 of From the Backline, the official podcast of 86forever.com. Today is October the 27th, 2015. My name is Jorge Mendoza. Thank you very much for tuning in. And today, joining me as always is our producer Chris Marsh. And on the other side of the table, my friend and co-host Mark Daly. Mark, today is a special episode of the show.
It is. Not only are we doing this in the regular audio format, but we're also broadcasting live with good folks from Tri-Cities TV. So it's pretty exciting. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so if you are listening to this show as a regular podcast, thank you for tuning in. If you are one of the brave souls that are actually live with us as we broadcast this over the internet and on Tri-Cities TV, we thank you for tuning in. And Mark, we are doing a special show for many reasons. One of them is because the Vancouver Whitecaps finally returned to winning ways. They secured the second spot on the Western Conference.
Hashtag bring it home, baby.
That's right. And now we're looking at the playoffs. And in order to really help us out to dissect what the MLS playoffs are going to be, we decided to bring a special guest co-host. He's a veteran now of From the Backline. He's coming up for the third time to the show. Hugo Carlos Chavez, he's our contributor for FootballMLS.com, which is the official MLS website in Spanish. He's also one of the regular co-hosts of Tiro Libre, the Spanish language podcast for FootballMLS.com. And he brings a wealth of knowledge about MLS, and he's a resident Liga MX expert. So, Hugo, welcome back to From the Backline.
Thank you, Jorge and Mark, for having me for the third time. The last two times were like a pretty good time, a really good chat with you, and I really enjoy being with you. It's a real honor to be with you also on this like real special show. And I'm very thankful that you guys don't forget about me when you are now, on TV.
Yeah, well, the next time we're on with Tri-Cities Community TV, hopefully you won't be in Mexico. Maybe you can come and join us in the same room, which would be pretty cool. And we have to give you extra props tonight. We know you're playing hurt. We know you're not 100%. So we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us this evening. So why don't we get into it? Where do we start? There's a lot of things to talk about. We had the 3-0 win for the Vancouver Whitecaps over the Houston Dynamo this past Sunday evening. Playoffs are set. The knockout matches go this Wednesday and Thursday, and that's going to determine what happens from here on out. This is a brand new season. Everything's reset, and this is what you play for. MLS Cup Playoffs start now.
That's right. So let's just start. Let's just start right there. So obviously, as we discussed, Mark, the Whitecaps clinched the second spot on the West thanks to their win against the Houston Dynamo 3-0 on Sunday, and a combination of results. But let's just talk about a little bit of the overall, real quick, about the overall season for the Whitecaps. They obviously won the Canadian Championship for the first time ever, and they also clinched a home playoff game for the first time ever. So regardless of what happens here on out, and based on the discussions that we have had in the past, can we say that maybe 2015 has been a success for the Whitecaps?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look, it's a club record for wins with 16 goals. I think was 45, so it was 3 more than last year, which is amazing when you think because a couple of months ago, or even not a couple of months ago, even just this week, people have still been concerned about the lack of goals because they hadn't scored since October 3rd.
So yeah, I'm going to have to agree with that. I think that from whatever happens in the playoffs, I think that the Whitecaps have not only reach the objectives that we wanted as fans for this year, but they also have exceeded. Like, we never would have thought that they would clinch or they would end up the year on second spot. So Hugo, you're coming to the discussion with a little bit of an outside perspective. What are your thoughts on the Vancouver Whitecaps in 2015? Do you think that did they exceed expectations? What are your thoughts on that?
For the most part, I will agree with you guys with what you just said. I don't know if they exceeded, but at least they matched what I was expecting from them. I think the Whitecaps, they, as I have said before, they don't have superstars like other teams have, but they have a really well-rounded roster. I think one of the best in the league, actually. And they had a great start. And if you look at the numbers in the end, as you said, they were second on the Western Conference. They scored a bunch of goals. They were actually one of the best teams on the road with 7 wins, something that only I think the Timbers did as well. Um, but I am a little disappointed with the way the season actually ended. I mean, obviously, I'm not talking about the game against Houston, but before that, they had like 5 games without winning. And when like the playoffs are the most important part of the season, like thinking about winning the championship, well, you have to be on a better shape when you get to the playoffs, and I don't think the Whitecaps are on the shape they should be on to actually be a contender to win the MLS Cup.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good point because I can tell you that during the match there was a lot of nervous energy in the press box. A lot of the club officials were you could tell that there was a lot of nervous energy there. But after the game was over, there was plenty of relief. I would say that in the locker room was almost a bit of euphoria because you take a look or almost juxtapose that with the 3-0 loss against Seattle a couple of weeks ago when the Sounders won the Cascadia Cup right in our own stadium. That night there was a real downcast, a real, it was just a real negative vibe in there. And I know 45 minutes is not a very big sample, but it kind of looked like it was a team that got a bit of a swagger back, a team that got a little bit of their mojo back, and it looked like that maybe that was just what they needed, not just to get one goal or 1 point, but to get several goals and get the all 3 points on offer to get into the playoffs with a little bit of momentum on their side.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point of what Hugo was mentioning. I think that perhaps the form has not been the best going into the playoffs, but at the same time, just like Mark's saying, I think that that win of 3-0 against Houston, it can be perhaps one of those results that allow this team to like really jumpstart their that form that it has been. So that's certainly something that we hope going into the playoffs, and we're going to analyze a little bit later on in the show, like the kind of form that all the teams going into the playoffs are going into. But before that, I just want to mention real quick, for example, the team awarded some awards for the entire 2015 season. So Kendall Waston was named Player of the Year. Jordan Harvey was named the Unsung Hero. And we had big names like David Usted and Matthias Lava who ended up empty-handed. Was that fair in your eyes, Mark?
Yeah, well, for the player of the year, I think you could take almost several different players if you want to, and pick one of them. I think the obvious big names for me are Kendall Waston is one of them, David Usted is the other, and Matthias Lava. Kendall, I think, is one of those guys that his presence in the lineup in the 11 at any given time is crucial. And I think you can make the argument to a certain extent that the clean sheets are not just a sole effort on the part of the goalkeeper. Obviously, David Usted has made some fantastically important saves over the course of the season. I think about the 2 penalty spots against Hugo's New York Red Bulls earlier this year. That was obviously a big one. Down in Dallas a couple of weeks ago, another penalty save. So we had 3 on the year. That's hard to argue with stats like that. And I think he second in the MLS this year with 12 clean sheets. So very impressive statistics for David Usted. And Matthias Lava again, and we've been raving about this guy for the last year and a half. So most people know how big fans that you and I are of Matthias Lava. And for me, I don't think you could really go wrong with any one of those 3 guys. And I'm not really upset or disappointed in any way or the other. The one that I thought was interesting was Jordan Harvey, the unsung hero for the Vancouver Whitecaps this year. I thought that was a good one. I think that quietly Harvey's had a fairly solid year. We saw earlier in the year that there seemed to be a bit of a transition between Harvey and Sam Adekugbe. Adekugbe was starting to get some more starts, getting some more minutes in place of Harvey. Harvey didn't say anything, the ultimate team guy. And then we saw when Adekugbe was injured in the first leg of the Canadian Championship against FC Edmonton, that's when Jordan came back in, and he's been pretty solid ever since. And I think he's pretty much been that way since Carl Robinson took over as head coach. And I think some of maybe the early criticisms and the earlier problems that we discussed in years gone by under the previous manager, the previous coaching regime, they're like just not there anymore. Jordan's a pretty solid guy.
So Hugo, should we concerned maybe that the designated players of the Whitecaps are not in the top performers of the year? I mean, were you surprised a little bit that maybe someone like Kendall Waston, as good as Mark has said, should we think about that maybe Octavio Rivero or Matias Lava or Pedro Morales should be getting that conversation, and they're not at all?
Well, I mean, clearly, I think Pedro Morales was the best player of the Whitecaps last year, and this year, I mean, as I said at the beginning, I think like the Whitecaps have one of the best rosters in the league. Because like for me, for example, at the beginning of the season, you can talk about Rivero being one of the key players, Morales obviously for some games, but then you can as well. I mean, you can talk about Waston for some games. Then you can talk about David Osted, which for me was the goalkeeper of the year probably, and he obviously had really good games. Even I mean, Nicolas Mesquida had good games. So I think that Whitecaps should not be concerned about that, because like you're not relying only on one or two or three players. I mean, whenever Rivero isn't working, I mean Techera comes in, or Mesquida comes in, or someone else steps up. So I think that's a good thing for the Whitecaps. You're not relying on someone. Obviously, you want always someone that's doing better than everyone else, because that means you can always fall back on that player, just like they did with Morales last year. But I mean, now Morales is well, as far as I'm concerned, you probably know better. He's injured, and I don't know if he's going to be able to play in the playoffs. But I mean, it's a good thing that they don't rely on him that much, because I mean, someone else can step up, and we know they can do it because they've been doing it for the whole year.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern, though, is when you see like Pedro Morales is injured, and you kind of go through the logical progression of the guys that play that same role. You go to Nicolas Mesquida, Mauro Rosales, and when they're injured as well, and now all of a sudden you're looking at Gershon Kofi playing in that central attacking midfielder role. I think we have to be a little bit concerned, because that's not really the role that Gershon's cut out for. I mean, you have to give him some respect and give him the credit, because he's come in and played in that position the last couple of matches, and I think he's done well for what's been expected of him. But
yeah. So I was a little surprised to see Kendall Waston taking it over David Osted, as we discussed that last week. But let's just switch gears a little bit. Hugo, you have a bit of a more broad perspective on what MLS is, and especially on the Eastern Conference. When you look at the trends of the teams that are coming in, New York Red Bulls, since August 26th, they're 7 wins and 2 losses. When you look back into the season, they have 5 wins in the first 15 matches, and then 13 in the rest of the year. So obviously, Hugo, we know that your affinities with the New York Red Bull. What do you think are sort of like the key factor that allowed them to turn that season around?
I'm just like really surprised on what the Red Bulls did. I think everyone is. I mean, after changing completely the philosophy of the team of bringing world stars like Thierry Henry or Rafael Marquez or Tim Cahill, they decided to even fire the coach who gave them the supporter shield 2 years ago. And I mean, even the fans were really angry with the Red Bulls, but they were able to turn the tables, and they won the supporter shield again. I think the Red Bulls are just a team that knows what they're playing. Jesse Marsch just like has been able to have its players know what he wants, and they perform. So I mean, it's great for the Red Bulls, but like I really don't see them as like winning the MLS Cup. Even though, as you know, I have sympathy for the team, but I don't think they're gonna win. Actually, like who I actually think has a better chance of winning and making it to the MLS Cup Final, it's a Columbus Crew, and I've been saying this even before the season, and as I think they actually got better in the second half of the season. So I think Columbus Crew should be for me, it's a team to beat in the East right now.
All right, so we're looking forward to see the Vancouver Whitecaps and the Red Bulls in MLS Cup Final. So switching, coast, Mark. We have Portland and Sporting Kansas City and Seattle against LA Galaxy. I pose the same question to you. Who do you think is going to go through? And keep in mind that this is going to have like basically direct implications as to who the Whitecaps are actually going to play.
I'm going to go for the two Cascadia teams because I think if you look at Sporting and you look at the LA Galaxy, they've really cooled off over the last month and a half. And Portland has been on a bit of a roll, and Seattle's done a little bit better too, especially since the Whitecaps beat them at CenturyLink at the beginning of August. So yeah, I would expect that. At this point in time, I would expect the Whitecaps to be making that trip down to Portland in the next week to play that first leg of the conference semifinals against the Timbers. And right now, I just don't think that the LA Galaxy have it. Very uncharacteristically for the Galaxy, they seem to have gotten very cold at this time of year. When we've seen in previous years, as time goes on, as the season goes on, they tend to build up a head of steam, and they just seem to get better and better and better. And we've talked about it before, how the LA Galaxy tends to be one of these teams that may not always start the season all that great, but they do get better over time. And for whatever reason, they're just a team that does very well when it comes to playoff times. And they have the trophy case to prove that.
So Hugo, a lot of times we hear things of like, well, just make it to the playoffs and then it's free for all and anything can happen. However, for example, in the West, we have three teams that are coming sort of like in a dipping form. We have LA, who has had one win since August 28th. The Whitecaps themselves have 2 wins since August 29th. Sporting Kansas City has 3 wins since August 19th. And we have 3 teams that are really in the upswing. We have FC Dallas, who have 7 wins since August 22nd. Even Portland and Seattle have 4 wins since late August. So how much weight do you think this running form going into the playoffs are going to play out?
I think it's extremely important that you make it on a positive streak, which obviously the Galaxy are not. I think Sporting it's the one that's probably easiest to say that they're going to be out again playing against Portland. But the Galaxy, I mean, they're having horrible the last games. They only won 2 games on the road for the whole season. But you cannot, I mean, they have Steven Gerrard, they have Giovanni Dos Santos, they have Robbie King, and they have Bruce Arena. So it's very hard to just say, Seattle is going to beat them, even though the game is in Seattle and they should be the favorites. But with the Galaxy, it's very hard to just say they're like you said, like they surprise on other seasons when they had a slow start and then suddenly they became the unbeatable team. I don't think they're obviously not on the shape of unbeatable right now, but with the type of players they have and the coach they have, you never know. On the Sporting side, I think Portland should run past them tomorrow or Thursday when they play. But I really think it is important to make it to the playoffs. It's not making it just like however to the playoffs. There has to be you have to make it to the playoff on positive notes. You cannot be playing your worst soccer once you make it to the playoffs.
So just to wrap up this first segment, with all the discussion that we just had in terms of the forms and how and keeping in mind how the Whitecaps perform against each team, who as the Whitecaps want to face in the conference semifinals. We keep in mind that Portland seems to be in the upswing. LA Galaxy can become LA Galaxy at any point in time, and Seattle has beaten the Whitecaps consistently this season. So who do you think the Whitecaps have the better chance to go into the conference final, Mark?
The conference final, that is a good question. I would like to say that the Whitecaps will make it through, but I'm just not really all that convinced that they'll be able to get over that hump against some of the Cascadia rivals. I'd like to say that that we could beat the LA Galaxy. Obviously, they've had some good results against the LA Galaxy this year. It's just, and I don't want to be too overly negative, but I'm still very concerned about the previous 2 months of form. I know that they've had some atrocious number of injuries, lots of suspensions, and untimely international call-ups, which have all worked against them during that time. And it just seems that even though they had a very good second half against Houston Dynamo, they haven't really had a chance to get back in form, and that really worries me. So I don't know. I would like to say that it would be the Whitecaps, but I'm thinking maybe it will be a Cascadia conference final, but it would be the Timbers and the Sounders.
So, Hugo, obviously, you have seen both a lot of Latin American soccer as well as MLS. We have seen a direct correlation here in Vancouver that the production of goals has really dried up as players like Pedro Morales and Nicolas Mezquita and Mauro Rosales and Christian Teixeira have become injured, and that has handicapped heavily the Whitecaps in terms of the production and in terms of having those kind of players who can create those chances. So do you think that having those players coming from Latin American countries, it really makes that much of a difference in a team or in a league that perhaps is not rich in those types of players?
Uh,
Oh, hang on.
Okay, we might have.
well, obviously, if we talk about the Vancouver Whitecaps, it makes a difference because I mean, as we know, those are the type of players who make the difference on top. But if we, I mean, you cannot make it as a general statement for the league because for example, the Red Bulls, they really don't have that Latin talent pool that Vancouver has. So I mean, for Vancouver, it applies, but I don't think it applies for all teams in the league. I mean, at the end of the day, it's having the right players for the system that the coach wants to play, and I mean, as long as it's effective and it pays off, it really doesn't matter. I mean, obviously, if you want to play like Vancouver plays, the type of players that you need are the Pedro Morales, the Christian Teixeiras, the Otavio Riveros. But if you want to play like I don't know, as a Red Bulls, then you need Dax McCarthy and you need Sasha and you need Bradley Wright Phillips.
So talking about important players, talking about players that come in and make an impact. Should we just basically give us as a granted that Sebastian Jovinko is gonna take the MLS MVP award? He obviously deserves it, and Hugo, do you think that he's gonna win it, and if he does win it, do you think that MLS is gonna be able to keep him long term, or do you think that a European club is gonna come back and try to pick him up?
He should win hands down. I mean, I don't see how he wouldn't be able to take the MVP award. I think Toronto should be. I mean, if we go back, Jovinko wasn't even going to come to Toronto until the summer, but he actually decided to leave Juventus and goodbye and come to MLS. So I think Jovinko is really committed to Toronto. He doesn't, he didn't stay in Juventus when he can have stayed, and maybe he wasn't playing much, but Juventus was winning everything. I mean, they were one game away of winning the league, the cup, and Champions League. They lost to Barcelona, and Jovinko could have been a part of that, but he decided to leave and come to Toronto earlier. So I mean, I can see maybe him going on loan for the winter, especially since he's also getting call-ups for the Italian team, the Italian national team. So maybe it's a good thing that he keeps on shape, thinking about the Euro is coming next summer, so he probably wants to be in shape to keep going to the Italian team. So I can see him going on loan, but I don't think he will be. I think he will stay for at least for 2016 in Toronto.
And I think that we saw that big commitment that Jovinko is really showing for this league, and especially for Toronto FC. Even just a couple of weeks ago, when just like Hugo saying, like, he received a call up from Italy. He was playing in Rome on Tuesday night. He flew back to Toronto. He basically arrived to Toronto, landed in Toronto 3 hours before kickoff, and then he went straight from the airport to BMO Field, and he featured in the match and scored a brilliant goal in the last 20 minutes that he had. So I think that makes a big difference with other big designated players that we have seen coming in the past. So talking about those sort of like DP signings, Mark, we saw a lot of big players coming in, big names like Steven Gerrard, Didier Drogba. Obviously, Jovinko aside, we had Altidore and Lampard and Pirlo, even though some of them just came halfway through the season. Like, what are sort of your takeaways from that? Like, who do you think really made an impact besides Jovinko?
Well, are we talking about impact on the pitch, or are we talking marketing-wise? Because some of those guys are household names. Like Pirlo is one, obviously. Frank Lampard, Didier Drogba. These are guys that are known throughout the world, not just in Europe and North America, but everywhere. And I think you can make the point that they did have an impact for their team. But as part... to compare to maybe like Sebastian Jovinko, do any other of those guys make the same impact as they did or he did for Toronto FC? Maybe not so much, but I think that in the amount of time that Didier Drogba's played for the Montreal Impact, I think that he has been very, very important for them, especially getting those 2 goals that he scored on Sunday afternoon for them. And Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver are all in the playoffs for the first time ever in MLS history that we have all 3 Canadian teams in. So that's impressive. But yeah, I think that Jovinko, I think hands down, he has to get the MLS MVP award. Anyways, I think we're pretty much out of time for this episode of From the Back Line, the first FTBL Live, and that was episode number 104. So, Hugo, before you go, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you online, on Twitter, and all those good things?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and at Hugo Carlos CHB. No, it's a little bit hard, so I'm going to say it again. It's at Hugo, Hugo, Carlos CHB. And you can also find me on the MLS website, which is the Spanish one mainly, which is footballmls.com. And but yeah, mainly on Twitter. Just follow me on Twitter.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much. And thank you all for listening. And of course, for those of you who are watching the live stream, you've already seen the show for this week. And for those of you who are download it anyways, it'll be coming out in a couple of days as usual in the usual places such as iTunes, Stitcher, and all the places where we post it. Anyways, you can find us on Twitter at From the Backline. You can also find us online at 86forever.com and also on Facebook at facebook.com/From the Backline podcast. Well, thank you very much. And also thank you to the good people from Tri-Cities Community TV. Thanks. This is the first live version. And I think we had a couple of tweets saying that we actually look at so. I guess we don't have faces made solely for podcasting.
That was my mom and my wife.
I'll take that as a half compliment. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. We will catch you again next week.
Thanks for listening to From the Backline. If you want the show notes for this episode or need to catch up on the latest Whitecaps FC coverage, head over to 86forever.com. Want to get in touch with us? Then send us an email to fromthebackline@outlook.com.